Time for another edition of the Improbability Engine. I'm Will Aubrey. My buddy Joe Darnell is here. And Joe, as always, we start with our moment of what?
Yeah, I opened up Twitter today, and apparently the President of the United States and LeVar Ball are having a feud. What? What? Does nobody have anything else going on today? Is there nothing else going on? God.
Well, mine is connected to that.
Okay.
I got up this morning, and I saw a story that people were confusing LeVar Burton with LeVar Ball, and LeVar Burton is receiving all of these hate tweets because people think he's LeVar Burton. And so my friend Katrina had shared that, and so I responded, how dumb can people get? And then I said, wait, I probably shouldn't have said that, which is true because less than 60 seconds later, I saw a story about a man who believes the earth is flat. He has built his own rocket. He's going to launch himself into the atmosphere so he can take a picture of the disk that he believes the earth is. It's like he heard what I said about how dumb people could get and said, here, hold my beer.
Yeah, and just so people know, LeVar Ball, big baller brand. LeVar Burton, butterfly in the sky. You don't remember LeVar Burton and Reading Rainbow? Oh, LeVar Burton. Geordie LaForge for Star Trek fans.
Yes, Star Trek, not Reading Rainbow, Star Trek.
Come on.
That's heresy.
You're such a cretin.
That's heresy.
You're crusty and old, Will. I'm just going to say it.
You've read about people renting their garments and burning them when they encounter a heretic. That's what I feel like doing.
Hey, anybody who's under the age of 70 will know that LeVar Burton, while also playing Geordie LaForge, played the main role in Reading Rainbow. I know there's a couple of younger folks out there who understand what I'm saying there. They know him from that. All right, so, Will, it's been actually a pretty busy week for sports. College basketball started up and moving well, and the Racers have done something they've never done before, and that's beat Wright State. What a good game that was. Now, you were telling me about that earlier. They came into that game as an underdog, correct?
They were a 6-point underdog according to the computer ratings, and at the beginning of the year, the computer predicted that Murray State would lose 17 games, so we all believe they'll do much better than that. I actually picked them to win 25 at the beginning of the season, but they have to outperform the computer ratings for that to happen, clearly, and they made a good start toward that by beating Wright State by 19 when they were predicted to lose by 6. Do I believe they're 19 points better than Wright State? Probably not, but I do think they are better than Wright State, and I think this may be the first step toward showing people how good they really are. Agreed.
Murray State was led by Terrell Miller at 21 points on 8 of 12 shooting, including 5 of 8 from three-point range. We know what kind of player that Terrell is. He's an incredible basketball player. Jonathan Stark had 16 points on 4 of 7 three-pointers. Newcomer Shaq Buchanan had 13. For Wright State, they were led by Loudon Love, the big freshman. He had 14 points and 8 rebounds. Grant Benzinger had 13 points as well, the guard. But a good win, a game that there's not been a long history between Murray State and Wright State, but it has been long enough that there were more than 1 or 2 games that Murray State has played them. They actually played 4 games, and Murray State had never beaten Wright State in those 4 games. And to go into Dayton and beat Wright State, I asked you earlier, should I have expected that, or should I be excited about it? You said be excited about it.
Absolutely. Be excited about it. It's the first step this year toward Murray State showing how good they really can be. And they didn't even really hit on all cylinders in that game.
Agreed.
They did get good play from Jonathan Stark and Terrell Miller.
Efficient play from both of those guys, which you've got to have. Those are 2 senior leaders. Those are, your OVC Player of the Year, preseason Player of the Year, OVC first teamers. You've got to have consistent play out of those guys. I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing from this team is the biggest struggle so far, and the struggle that we had against Middle Tennessee State for Murray State, was really getting everybody's roles defined enough to be generally positive. Against Wright State, you saw a little bit of a regression as it comes from John Morant, mainly because of foul trouble. But he's a freshman. You know, this is a guy who's extremely gifted, who's very, very good. I think as this team develops and goes along with they've got good chemistry. They care about one another. They want to work it out. They'll find their roles, and I could see this team being one of the better teams in Murray State history. They have that kind of talent at depths that we normally don't see. So
I agree completely with you, and I wouldn't worry about Morant's scoring falling off in that game. The Racers are a three-headed monster with Stark, Miller, and Morant, and teams are going to have to pick their poison.
Right.
Wright State chose not to let Morant be the guy that beat them, and they limited his shots to a certain extent, and I think that helped open things up for Terrell Miller and Jonathan Stark. Now, what did you think about the change in the starting lineup with Shaq Buchanan taking the place of Byron Hawkins?
You know, I don't mind that. I think we've got guys. I think we've got about 6 guys who could be starting. They're starter caliber guys that, depending on how you want to do things, can be matchup ready. I like Buchanan. I like his defensive intensity. I like his length. His slashing ability is really fantastic. I think Hawkins will start a lot this season. I think he is that good. I mean, this is a guy that the players elected as a team captain. He's the only non-senior team captain with 2 guys who, you know, Jonathan Stark and Terrell Miller, which you look at and say, okay, yeah, those guys need to be team captains. Then you've got, Hawkins. I think Hawkins is going to be fine. I like what his game looks like. I like how complimentary he is on the floor with different lineups. He's the kind of guy that, I mean, if you start to say, okay, well, let's play big, or let's play fast, or let's play perimeter, or let's play post, he's a guy that can fit in a lot of different ways. He's just kind of a jack of all trades. So anytime you have a guy like that, I think that's a positive. I like what he's bringing. I think we'll see more of him as the season develops. The guy that I'm really interested in seeing develop is Dupree. We need Dupree to step up. I think having that post presence. What I like so far from the games I've seen Murray State play is that you're seeing some scoring coming from the 5 position. Now, it's not a lot of scoring, and it's not super complex. A lot of times it's a read the double team, dump to the other guy for a dunk. You know what? That's really all you need sometimes. Now, I'd like to have a little bit more, and Dupree is the guy that offers it. He's actually got some post moves, but he's got to stay out of foul trouble. He's still doing too much and causing fouls to happen. And this isn't college basketball like it was 15 years ago. The rules have changed. So I look for Hawkins and Dupree to be the guys that kind of determine how high this team can go. What are your thoughts?
Well, I do think that Dupree and Sanchez both need to do a little more than they have done so far. I'm not really particularly worried that much about the scoring, although I'd like to see them maybe get 6 to 8 points a game. They've got to rebound the basketball, and they have to provide a defensive presence. They don't need to score double figures. Now, Sanchez, through the first couple of games of the year, looked like a better player. He looked like that he was going to be more productive this year. He was not productive at all against Wright State.
Right. And against Wright State, those 2 guys, Sanchez and Dupree, combined for 16 points and 4 rebounds. What's really impressive about that, while I'd like to see their numbers for rebounding go up, 4 rebounds for 2 guys in the post is not
almost
great.
All the points were with Dupree, though.
Right. Well, Sanchez was 2 of 2 for 4 points, and Dupree was 5 of 5 for 12 points.
Right.
Which I'm okay with both of those things. I mean, you're talking about 2 guys that...
But Sanchez, you can't have him playing 20-plus minutes and getting 4 points and 1 rebound.
No, and that's going to be the issue. And he played 20 minutes. And a lot of that was because of the foul trouble Dupree had. But even Smith had foul trouble, and you can't have that. You've got to have a 5. You got to have somebody who can stay on the floor. But I like the energy. I like what we're seeing. And I think that's part of the adjustment and growing into that starter's role in Division I basketball.
Now, one thing about that Wright State game that if fans didn't watch it, they may not realize this. There was one of the worst officials' decisions that has ever occurred in any sport at any time. They called an illegal screen, and they sent Wright State to the free throw line to shoot 1-and-1. And Coach McMahon called the referee over, and he said, have they changed the rule? And the point being, offensive fouls do not result in free throws.
Right. They just don't.
And no, they haven't changed the rule. And so Coach McMahon said that later the official came over and said, I'm sorry, man, we fucked that up. But, of course, that was it was too late. They had already given Wright State 2 free throws.
Right. No, and some of that's to be understood. But let's look at Wright State for just a second, because Wright State brings something that not a lot of teams in the Ohio Valley Conference do, and that is size. You're talking about a Wright State front line. The starters on the front line were 6'9", 275 and 6'11", 235. You're not going to find that in a lot of OVC schools. In fact, I can't think of a single OVC school who has that kind of size. And I'm thinking primarily right now about the skilled bigs like over at EKU. Jackson Davis at 6'8", Mayo at 6'8", 6'9". Neither one of those guys has the kind of girth that Wright State brought to bear. And that puts a lot of pressure on your bigs, especially in a team like Murray State, whose bigs are Miller at 6'8", who's more of a stretch 4. Dupree at 6'9" is big and strong. Sanchez is strong, but neither one of those guys are 6'9", 250. I mean, Dupree's a good-sized kid, but, it's 6'11", 235 versus, what Dupree can bring. That's hard matchup for them to have. And then you bring a guy like Smith onto the floor, who's not as tall but is very active, and you can understand why the fouling happened down in the post. I think what we saw at Wright State was some poor officiating. I don't like criticizing officials, because no matter how you do it, you sound like a homer, and there's nothing you can do about that. But I think that there is a place for us to say the officiating was lackluster in that game, which is a far cry from what Murray State's next opponent had against Louisville in SIU. They had a superstar officiating crew. They had Tom Eads. They had, anytime you can bring in guys that have done Final Fours, and I think there were 2 guys on the floor who had done multiple Final Fours, that's pretty impressive. Although, as we look towards SIU, that game is probably not a game, if you're a Saluki fan, you want to look at and try to gather anything from.
You mean the Louisville game?
The Louisville game,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
SIU versus Louisville.
Now, Murray State plays SIU on Saturday.
Yeah.
This is a big game for the Racers. Currently, SIU is a 2-point favorite in the computer model. It's a game where the Racers really need to continue to outperform the computer projection and demonstrate that they are better than what everybody thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season. They need to go out and beat this SIU team, and I really believe that they will. SIU got doubled up by Louisville, 84-42. The problem SIU presents is their 4 best players are big guys.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you look at what they've done, I think a lot of the issues that SIU had was really with Louisville's length. There were a lot of missed layups, even open layups from SIU, and I think a lot of that is looking over your shoulder, waiting for the shot blocker to come, especially early on in the game. I think Louisville's length caused them a lot of issues. Now, that's not something that Murray State's going to be able to replicate. That doesn't mean that you can't do it, but it changes how you go about doing things. For SIU, you're right about their size. You look at a guy like Kevion Pippen, averaging 12 points, 7 rebounds a game, 6'10", 240. That's a big boy. That's going to be a tough. I think we can match that guy up. Jonathan Wiley, 6.7 rebounds. He's 6'7", 200. Okay, that guy we can probably handle. But when you start getting into the bench, it's the depth of their size that's important.
Rudy Stradniks has made 7 out of 9 shots for them so far this season, 77.8%, and he's a big guy. And then you got Jonathan Wiley, and Wiley is second on the team in rebounds at 7.3.
Right. They can bring some size to bear, and I think that's something that has to be accounted for. Now, the good thing that Murray State has is whenever you look at their perimeter play, SIU's perimeter play, they're led by Armand Fletcher, who's a 6'5" junior. Probably I'd call him a small forward, but he's probably a guard. 14 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. He's a heck of a player, and is going to be a matchup issue at 6'5". Now, that's not to say that there's not players that can guard. There aren't players that can guard him.
He hasn't shot it well so far.
Right.
He's
I think that
43% overall, 30% from 3, and as a team, SIU shooting just 40% from the floor and 28.8% from 3. Now, the thing that you have to be concerned about is their defense, though, because their opponents haven't shot it well either. 41.8 from the floor and 30.3 from three-point range.
Right.
They will guard Murray State and make it difficult for them to score.
Well, and the thing that you have to do against a team with that kind of length is you've got to be able to drive past them. A lot of times guys with length reach. So you've got to have a way to break that down. I look for a guy like Shaq Buchanan if he can stay out of foul trouble. He's a great defensive player on the perimeter. I think his offensive game as a slasher could come into play here. If it does, he needs to hit free throws. You look at a guy like Anthony Smith, another energy guy who's high motor and can play defense a little differently than the other bigs that you've got. He has to stay on the floor, and he has to keep hitting free throws. But you look at the youth of Morant, you look at Stark, you look at Miller, those 3 guys have to have good games. Not great games. They don't have to be all world. I don't need a perfect shooting night and going for 50 points, but they have to be efficient, they have to play within the offense, and they have to hit shots when they're open.
Now, about 3 or 4 years ago, Barry Henson, the coach of SIU, came here and had an epic post-game where he talked about how the fact that his big guys couldn't make shots, and he said, my wife would have shot faked at least once. It was hilarious. Murray State needs to maybe shot fake a time or two against their big guys down low.
I look at it, too, that it's like you've got to figure out where that came from. In that game, Racer defense disrupted every aspect of SIU's offense. Every single aspect, from running up the floor to dribbling to making simple passes, that Racer defense was a disruptive force. So if you're looking at how to replicate that kind of meltdown from Barry Henson, you got to do it with the defense. You've got to continue your presence. What so far has happened with the Racer defense is they're limiting a team's ability to shoot from beyond the arc. They're 3rd in the country in 3-point defensive field goal percentage. That's fantastic. That's great. I don't see SIU as being a team that lives and dies by the 3. So while you can do that and you want to stop those shots, you've got to stay in front of your man and play good defense if you want to win this game. And you've got to win this game. This is a big game.
It really is.
This is a temperature taker. This tells you where you're at as a team and in your development. Now, if they lose, does that mean it's all over? No, of course not. It's still early in the year. But this is one that you really want to have. Not the least reason of which there's still weird buzz going on around the Murray State program about interest in the Missouri Valley Conference. Now, I have absolutely no source that says that any of this stuff is real, but it just seems to pop up everywhere, and it's disparate areas that it's coming from. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, but I know that winning against Missouri Valley Conference teams is important.
I agree. I would add only that I have a feeling that there will be an announcement forthcoming maybe in January.
Oh.
Now, the announcement might be we're not going to the Missouri Valley.
Yeah, if you call, from a PR standpoint, if you call a press conference to announce nothing's changing, that's not a great look. That's kind of bad. But
it could be a situation where the Missouri Valley invites Murray State, and Murray State says, sorry.
I don't know if I'd buy that.
Now, I don't think that's what
No, I'm right. I don't think that you're thinking that either. I think when it comes to that kind of stuff, I think the overtures made by the athletic department and by the university leadership have been clear in their indications of the desire for the university to move to a larger platform than the OVC.
Now, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Terrell Miller, I thought, would have had a chance at Player of the Week, did not get it. Murray State picked third to start the season in the OVC.
Yep.
More than one coach that I talked to thought they should have been picked higher. Do you think that the OVC, the other members, are at all trying to maybe poke Murray State in the eye, just as a way to get back at them for their dalliance with the Missouri Valley Conference earlier this year?
Maybe. I think it's more to do with the conference's infatuation with Belmont. And don't get me wrong, Belmont had a really good week. They beat Vanderbilt. They won their games. They played well. They're a good team. They beat Middle Tennessee State, something Murray State didn't do.
That's right.
I think when you're looking at Belmont, though, you've got to be realistic about what Belmont is. They're a great regular season team. They're coached by a no-brainer Hall of Famer. I mean, it's anybody who says he's not a first ballot Hall of Fame coach should have their voting privileges revoked. This is a guy that led a team from obscurity in the NAIA to being one of the winningest coaches in Division I. He's a fantastic basketball coach, and might I add, a nice guy, which doesn't always happen. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's one or the other. I think, though, that what you see is what you get. They have no real postseason accolades in their history. None. They've got no wins in the NCAA tournament. They've got, 2 wins in the NIT ever? Maybe not even that. I'd have to look it up. They're not even, as much as the OVC has pushed the top seeds into the finals and a chance for those teams to make it into the NCAA tournament, Belmont is not great in that position either. Even looking at last year when they lost, they lost and didn't get to go to the NCAA tournament.
Well, if you look at Belmont and you look at the types of players that they get, and this may make the job that Rick Byrd has done seem even more impressive.
Right.
He himself put it this way to me. He said, we don't get the kind of guys that go and play in Europe. Our guys, toward the end of their senior year, they're not looking forward to continuing to play basketball. They're looking forward to what their life's going to be like after they get their degree in business or whatever they choose to pursue. And so, they tend not to be that athletically gifted, yet they succeed anyway.
Well, and it just goes to show you, I think what you're finding there is that you've got a coach who has a full grasp on his program. He understands what he can do, and he's a great evaluator of talent and personality. Rick Byrd is one heck of a coach. He's the kind of coach that if you're a program, generally speaking, he's the coach you want to have. The problem is he reminds me in a lot of ways of Tubby Smith. Tubby Smith, a good evaluator of talent, finds guys that nobody else seems to find. Doesn't always go and get that elite talent level where you look at him and go, oh, that guy's freaking awesome. He's fantastic. He's this, that, and the other. But puts together a team usually that's competitive, that's smart, that plays hard, that you fall in love with as a fan because, frankly, they work their tails off. And you love as a fan, I love watching a team that works their tail off. You know what I mean? I don't care if you're not the best player on the floor. If you give every ounce of energy to it, I'm going to fall in love with it. It's just awesome to me. Much like I often think of the majority of the Duke teams, that the unheralded Duke teams that Krzyzewski had were like that. You have guys like Steve Wojciechowski who never was going to be the guy that you're like, oh, that guy is going to be a top 10 draft pick, but would play his butt off for you. I think the difference has come to Rick Byrd is basketball's not what it was 30 years ago, and you've got to go and you've got to win games in the tournament. There's a desperation in these conferences like the OVC to win games in the postseason, and if you don't, that's a huge, huge, huge loss. The best thing that could have happened in the OVC was a streak of Murray State and Morehead State winning games in the NCAA tournament. Now, mind you, I will put the caveat that Morehead State's win was in an opening round game, but it's a win. I don't care how you slice it. They won as a 16 seed and then earned the right to play.
Was it Eastern Kentucky that beat Louisville? Either Morehead or Eastern beat Louisville, one of the two.
Yeah. No, you look at those, and those are the kind of things, you've got to have those shares. From a budgetary standpoint, you have to have shares.
I agree.
So either you're making money, you're growing, or you're dying.
One final comment from me on Racer basketball. Go to murraysports.net because I have a video that I put up. I'm a racer and I know it. It is still as awesome as it was 5 years ago when it came out, when Murray State was 20-0.
Yeah, that was a fantastic, fun time there. Just a good time had by all on that one. That was a great time to be a racer. And frankly, you know, it was just fun to see everybody come together on that. And that, you know, that was done by, I believe, Graves County High School, a local high school here, which is fantastic. So anytime you can have something like that brings people into the group, that's always a positive thing.
Anything else?
No, I think that's about it.
That brings to a close this edition of the Improbability Engine.